I said, was that okay if I ask a question? Will you guys answer the question and to let us enter into a conversation together? They said, yeah. I said, okay, here's your question. What is your biggest question in life? And it was crickets. For 2 minutes, nobody's answering anything. Finally, I said, now, you do see now the power of questions, don't you? Because you know if you answer that question, you're going to open up to reveal something about yourself before everybody else. Here's another question. What are you so afraid of? What are you so afraid of? So finally, the guy to my right answers, well, what are we going to be doing in heaven? So the next guy, how do I even know there's a heaven? Next guy, I've heard there's such a thing as eternal salvation and eternal life. I don't know if there is such a thing, but if there is, how do I get it? Next guy, look, there's hundreds of religions in the world. Are all of them true or is none of them true, and how would we know? Next guy, I've lived a long time. How do I know I've lived the life I was supposed to have lived? All these guys went around the table, 12 of them. They were all end-of-life questions. Why? Because that's where they are. There's not much sand left in the hourglass of these guys left, and they can count the grains now, right? So they were all end-of-life questions. I said, wow, I wasn't expecting that. I didn't have any idea what they were going to say. So, but this is the beauty of questions. You don't know what they're going to say, but they're going to say something, and then you can respond. So I responded by saying, wow, those are some really deep questions. The guy that invited me says, well, those are our questions. You're the teacher. What's the answer? Right? So I said, well, it seems to me that if we're going to answer your questions, we need to ask another question. And if we know the answer to that question, we can answer all of yours. And so I said, are you ready for this question? Right? We need to be able to answer this question. And it's the same as the answer to this riddle. All right? What does man need most, yet fear and resist most? What does man need most, yet fear and resist most? And they were pretty quiet. I said, have you guys ever seen the movie A Few Good Men? They said, yeah. I said, well, you remember the end scene, don't you? Jack, played by Tom Cruise, the JAG lawyer, he's in the courtroom, he's got Colonel Jessup, Jack Nicholson playing himself on the stand, right? And what's he asking for? And they answered, the truth. That's the question. Yes, that's the question we need answers. Is there such a thing as truth? Is there such a thing as objective, transcendent, moral truth by which all of us may guide our way through life? Is there a North Star of truth? That's a big question. And if we know the answer to that question, we can answer your question along with the other 4 big questions of life. And they said, what are the big questions of life? I said, well, there's the question of origin. Where did we come from? Are we cosmic accidents? Or is there a creator God? And if so, what is he like? Then there's the question of identity. Who am I? Who am I meant to be? I know who I've tried to be to get people to like me and affirm me, validate me, and make my way through life. But why do I always seem to be performing for others to get others to think well of me? Who am I meant to be? Number 3, meaning and purpose. What is the meaning of life? The meaning and purpose of my life. The question of morality. What values are to guide my life? Where do those values come from? And how will I live them out? And then the question you guys are asking, and that is the question of destiny. What happens to me when I die? Can I know where I will spend eternity? Those are the 5 big questions of life. Guys, do those questions live in your hearts? They said yes. I think they live in every human heart. They're written there. No matter our age, our gender, culture, continent lived on, and century lived in. Those questions reside in every human heart, waiting, needing to be answered if we are going to have any definition to our lives at all. Otherwise, we just wander our way through this life. And so I asked them, and by the way, is there such a thing as truth to be able to answer these questions? And what are the implications and consequences if there is no such thing as truth? Right? If there is no North Star of truth to guide our lives, then we will all end up navigating our way through the dangerous, dark sea of life by the subjective lights in the bow of our own little boats. Everybody doing what they think is right, what they feel is right. I said, I don't know about you guys, but is that a world that you want to live in? These guys knew my father. A lot of them knew my father. I said, my dad. And I told them the story about my dad sitting down one time. He's 82 years old, and we sat down for lunch one day. He said something, and it didn't sound right to me. I said, Dad, that doesn't seem right. He says, who are you to say what's right, Jim? Who are you to say what's right? I said, well, what do you believe is right, Dad? Whatever a man believes in his own mind is right. That's subjective light of truth, you see. I said, then was Hitler right? He said he might have been. I said, seriously, Dad? What would the 6 million Jews he slaughtered answer to the same question? Or the whole world, which was plunged into a world war, you being one of them and your brother killed in the war, what would they answer to the same question? Is that a world you want to live in? Seriously, Dad. These are the conversations we get into that can end up plowing the soil, tilling the soil in a person's heart to maybe receive the truth. Most of us go through life never questioning very much. We just kind of do what our appetites of body and soul tell us to do, right? So, with these guys, the guys, I asked them as this question. So, of the 5 big questions of life, right? Which one is most difficult for you to answer definitively? And when I ask those 5 questions of rooms, whether it be believers, churches, a room full of people, or a secular audience too, by the way, completely secular audience. 2/3, 3/4 of the hands every time go up on meaning and purpose. What's the meaning of life? What's the meaning and purpose of my life? Almost every single time. But I asked these guys, so which one of those 5 questions do you think is the most important one to answer if we're going to be able to have the answer to all the others? And we agreed. The biggest question was the question of origin. That's the big question. By the way, this is the big question today in our postmodern world. This is the huge question today, because there are those who say there is no creator God. We are cosmic accidents. You'll run into this all the time, especially when you speak to younger people. You're going to run into this all of the time. So I said the first question is the biggest one. Is there a creator God? And if so, what is he like? The guy that invited me to the meeting said, Jim, there's no way we can know that. There's no way we could know that. He's way up there somewhere. We're down here, and we're in the dark. So always when we go to the question of origin, which is the fundamental question, right, from which identity, meaning, morality, and destiny flow, the question of origin is the big question. It's the biggest question for us in the church too, by the way. What is God actually like? What are his intentions? What's his true nature from which flow his will and his ways? So he said, there's no way we can do that. I said, well, maybe you're right. But one man made some pretty exclusive truth claims that no one has ever made. He's made that no one's ever made. And if we're going to be honest in our search for truth and our need for truth, we need to pay attention to his words. So I quoted many of the words of Jesus himself. The Word became a flesh and blood human being. He was full of grace and of truth, right? I am the way, I am the truth. And no one comes to the Father but through me. And then these powerful words. In John chapter 18, standing before Pilate, Jesus says, the reason that I was born, The reason that I came into this world is to bear witness to the truth. And then Pilate's sneering answer, what is truth? Right? So I said, Jesus said he reveals it. And so the guy that invited me says, you just answered my biggest question. I can know the truth through Jesus. Right? And so his comment led to another question. Right? How do we come to know the truth through Jesus and receive what Jesus is actually saying he's offering to us? Well, then that brings us to the question of our need for what? Forgiveness for the wrongs we've done, and which only cleared the way for God's ultimate intention to give himself to us, to live in us, both now and forever. And so then I share with them the story. I said, well, I don't know about you guys, but one time I crossed a line I thought I could never cross in life. And when I crossed that line, I realized that not only had I done something wrong, there was something horribly wrong in me that makes me do wrong. And that line may sound silly to you, but it was cheating on a golf course in a professional golf tournament. Never mind, I cheated on everything else. Everything. The closest of relationships, everything. But this is the one thing I knew I could never do. I said, guys, have you ever crossed a line that you didn't think you could ever cross? Well, I did. And when I did that, I realized there's something horribly wrong in me that is the source of my wrongdoing, and I couldn't fix it because I was what was wrong with my life. So I told them my story about being on the tour a few months later, falling down to my knees, compelled to my knees to say, God, I give this miserable life to you. You'll take it. Christ, I don't even know who you are, but I'm begging you to come into my life to do with me what you will. And I said, the miracle is he did. I woke up the next day. There were new things about me that were not there before. I had new desires. First thing I want to do is pick up a Bible and read about this guy. First thing I did was go find a Christian whom I'd always made fun of on the tour. My favorite saying was, "Lions won, Christians nothing," when I beat them, right? Yeah. So, and he asked, and I went to Rick Maskey. He says, "Why do you want to know?" And I told him. But there was something else. There was this joy that was on the inside. Didn't come from what I was smoking or drinking or who I was with or what I shot. It was from the inside. Why were these things new? Because there was a new someone living in me, making me brand new. And now life, from then on, would be learning to get to know him in such a way as to the changing of my life. I told the guys a story. I said, so guys, how about you? Have you done wrong in life? Have you ever noticed there's something wrong in you as a source of your wrongdoing? Would you like to receive his offer of forgiveness and eternal life? Anyway, I'm out of time here, but that's just the way that questions work. If we learn to use them to enter into meaningful dialogues with others. I'll share one other story. This is when we're meeting with people. I got a call one time from in the pro shop, and they said, "The phone's for you, Jim." And this guy says, "This is Jim Barker." I said, "Yeah." He says, "My psychiatrist told me I needed to call you." and he says, "Would you meet with me?" I said, "Yeah." We met across the street at the Canyon Cafe, and I sat down. A nice guy dressed in a jacket like this, about 45 years old or 50 years old. We had just like a vodka martini sitting next to him. We sat down. He says, "So what's your deal?" He's asking me the questions now. What's your deal? I said, "What's my deal? You're the one who called me. What's your deal?" And then it struck me. I said, "Oh, you're having trouble with that, aren't you?" He says, "I just got out of rehab for the 4th time. A doctor told me if I don't quit, that I will not have long to live. And so, what do you say?" I said, "Well, I don't know you very well, but if you don't mind me being just a little bit blunt, seems like there's only 2 questions laying on the table in front of us, needing and waiting to be answered. And that first question is, where are you going to spend forever? Where are you going to spend forever? You're on your way home here because you've had too much to drink, you got hit by a semi, and when you get to the pearly gates, and they say, why should I let you in? What are you going to say? Because my mother's in heaven. I said, your mother can't get you there. Your mother. So we had this conversation. And the second question is not only where are you going to spend forever, but what's your life going to be like until that day? Mm-hmm. Those are the two big questions. Where are you going to spend forever? What's your life going to be like until that day? So anyway, those just questions. Anybody have any questions? Jim?
Jim, you're talking about things that are very scary to all of us. How do we get to the point? My biggest fear is, well, I have the right question to ask.
Yeah.
But you said something at the beginning, you got to start somewhere and start practicing, which is,
yeah, I
guess, how you taught golf. So
yeah.
You maybe taught people like us, how do we get to that next step?
I think the best way is we have to be prepared. Prepared. Pray about it first, but spend some time. Spend some time with the questions. That's what you're getting ready to put your table time to today. Spend some time with these 5 big questions. Spend some time thinking and rehearsing, even pre-planning for conversations you might have. Play them out in your mind. It's just imagination that is helping us to be prepared for the conversations when they come. So I would say start by asking yourself the question. Right? And so at your table time today, here's a couple of things to do. How about at your table time, if each of you take a pen and in a short kind of way, maybe write down your answer to the 5 big questions of life. Question of origin, identity, meaning, morality, destiny. Write down your answers in a brief period of time, and then share your answers with each other at the table. And if you have time, why don't you come up with a 1-sentence answer to answer the 5 big questions? I walked into the pro shop one time, and I can take 2 minutes here. Walked in a pro shop, and he had a young pro there named Ryan, kind of a cocky kid, 22 years old. He says, ask me any question, Parker. I got the answer. I said, question about what? He said, doesn't matter, golf, life. I got the answer. You asked me the question, I got the answer. I said, okay, there's something I've been thinking about, Ryan. How would you in 1 sentence answer life's 5 big questions? He says, what are those? And I went through the list. Origin, identity, meaning, purposes. Whoa, I wasn't quite ready for that. I said, well, which one's hardest for you to answer? He says, origin, of course. I said, well, what are your options? He says, I have 3. You got 3 options to origin? He says, yeah. I said, well, what's number 1? He says, biology. Biology. I said, so let me get this straight. Let me just ask you about that. You're saying that one time out of nothing, a big bang happened, exploding lifeless matter through an endless universe. And then somehow lifeless matter, by spontaneous biology, appeared complete with the ability to reproduce itself. Is that what you're saying? He says, well, yeah, I guess so. I said, what's your second option? He says, well, I don't know, there could be, I don't know, maybe there's a God. I said, what's your third option? He says, just ignore these stupid questions and get on with life. I said, well, let me ask you a question. Would you like to get together and talk about the question of origin? He said, yeah. We ended up spending 11 lunches together. 11 lunches. I said, would you like to read something that doesn't even begin with the idea of God? He said, yeah. I gave him a copy of Mere Christianity. He read Mere Christianity, for crying out loud. And then, after that, I said, now, you probably should encounter the truth claims of Jesus. He read the Gospel of John. 11 lunches. Never closed the deal. He never said yes to Jesus. But his heart was prepared. At least it made him think. Anyway, so maybe y'all could work on answering, just see if you can answer the last 5 big questions briefly, share your answers with each other, maybe come up with a 1-sentence answer. And by the way, if we as believers in Christ cannot answer these questions, What are we exporting to the world around us?